would like to introduce you to a truly remarkable man. He's a cowboy. He's made history exposing the most toxic secrets of agribusiness. Fondly called the Mad Cowboy, Howard Lyman spent his career as one of the largest cattle feed operators in the United States until something happened. And that was a battle with cancer. And it turned him into one of the most vocal vegan activists the world has ever seen. He became world famous after an appearance on Oprah. You probably remember it. It rattled meat markets around the world. And he is going to tell us all about that. Howard, come on and talk to us, because you're the man. You're the man who got me to go vegan. I interviewed you 10 years ago. And you asked me if I was a vegan, and I said I'm just a vegetarian. You said liquid meat, and I never touched dairy from that moment on.
Thank you very much, Jane. We're here today. We're approaching the cliff at 200 miles an hour. The politicians and the bureaucrats are talking about not to worry. They're going to give the best care possible to those that survive at the bottom of the cliff. I'm a fourth-generation farmer, rancher, feedlot operator. I travel around the world and I talk to people about the proper amount of animal products to have in their diet as being zero. What I want to tell you is that I spent 45 years of my life in production agriculture. What we are doing today in America on our farms and ranches is absolutely, totally non-sustainable. We need to change. I was raised during the Second World War. We had the largest organic dairy farm in the state of Montana. My parents couldn't hire any help, and my mother and father were milking cows. That meant that I was raised by my grandparents. Back then, there was no such thing as swing slides or Lego blocks. My first job, 5 years old, was working in the garden. Birds, trees, and living soil. I thought it was the Garden of Eden. The only thing I ever wanted to be was a farmer. I spent the first 12 years of my life doing nothing but partying and playing football because I knew I was going to be a farmer. But when I went to that farm or that business to be run, I didn't have the tools to run a business. I was dumber than a post. I didn't let that bother me any. I did what most good red-blooded American youth, 12 years of going to school and not learning anything, I immediately went on to the university. I went to the university because I wanted to be an agribusinessman. Now, I couldn't spell it, but I knew that's what I wanted to be. I learned a thing about herbicides, pesticides, hormones, and medication. I soaked it up like a sponge. I was going to go home and take that organic farm and turn it into an agribusiness. I graduated with a degree in agriculture, and I went home and I said to my father, I said, move over, Pop. I'm going to take this one-horse business and I'm going to turn it into an agribusiness. And he said, what in the world is that? And I said to him, didn't you ever hear about better living through chemistry? He said, no, our job is to work with nature. I said, that's old-fashioned. Our job is to feed a hungry world. I never met a chemical that I didn't like. Herbicides, pesticides, hormones, and medication. I took that one-horse farm, and over a period of years, I turned it into an operation where I had 7,000 head of cattle. I can't tell you what a thrill it was the first time I wrote a check for $1 million, and it didn't bounce. And I thought, man, I have arrived. I'm the Donald Trump of agriculture. But just when I was on top of the world, I got a wake-up call. I ended up paralyzed from the waist down. I had a tumor on my spinal cord, and the doctor told me, he said, if that tumor is on the inside of the cord, you have less than 1 chance in 1 million you will ever walk again. Here I am, waiting for an operation. A lot of things going through my mind. It was not about owning 7 combines at $100,000 apiece, or 20 tractors or 30 trucks. What was going through my mind is why I became a farmer. Birds, trees, and living soil. I saw the birds die, the trees die. I saw the soil change. And it was not until I was paralyzed I was willing to admit I was the problem, not the solution. They operated on me for 12 hours. Cut the bone off of the back of my spinal column. Sure enough, the tumor was on the inside of the cord. They split the covering on the cord. Not only was it on the inside, it was under the cord. They could not lift the cord up to get to the tumor. All they could do was pick a nerve, cut it. They took out a tumor the size of my thumb. I walked out of the hospital with a 1 in a million operation. But I guarantee you I walked out a much different individual. I knew that it was not about more land or more cattle or more equipment. There was more to it than just being bigger and richer. I went to my banker and I said to him, I need your help. We need to start farming with nature. My banker, he reared back in his chair and he said, what in the world does that mean? I said, I think we need to become organic farmers. And he looked at me and he said, you want me to lend you money? You're not going to share it with my other customers, the chemical dealer, the pharmaceutical dealer, the fertilizer dealer? He said, there will never be a day like that. And so 1983, I sold my farm, I paid my debts, and I started working with other farmers to start producing food correctly. I learned that there's a lot of money out there that do not want people to know the truth. I started talking to people about not eating animals. Talked to them about mad cow disease. They thought I was the one that had holes in my brain because they'd never heard of it. But I ended up on the Oprah show. I told a few million people that we were grinding up cows and feeding them back to cows, that we were scraping up roadkill, deer, elk, possum, raccoons, and we were feeding those back to cows. And then we were taking euthanized pets, dogs and cats, full of chemicals that were used to kill them. The city of Los Angeles alone, 200 tons of dogs and cats a month are being ground up and put back into the feed for our pets or our food animals. Oprah, her eyes were as big as saucers. She turned around and looked at the guy from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and said, Dr. Weber, are we feeding cows to cows? I will never forget what he had to say. There's a limited amount of that going on. Well, the next thing out of Oprah's mouth got us sued. She said, that stops me cold. I will never again eat a burger. Now, I knew that 13 states had a thing called the food disparagement law. But the food disparagement law said it was against the law to say anything you knew to be false. I told the truth. But guess what? The cattlemen sued. They didn't want the people to know the truth. They ended up suing us for 6 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars defending our right to tell the American people the truth. I want you to realize sitting here today that if we don't deal with the truth, if we don't realize the fact that the majority of Americans today are dying from pain inflicted by their fork, we're digging more graves with our fork than any other tool that's out there. We need to look at what's going on in the world. We need to understand that Easter Island, for example, when you have these large stone monuments set up on the beach, at one time was a vibrant society. Rich soil, trees, boats, fish. But in there, your stature was how big a stone monument you put up. Well, there were some stowaways came to the island, rats. They didn't care because the rats were not eating the human food. They were eating the seeds from the palm trees. As they cut down the trees to sled the large monuments down to the beach, there were fewer and fewer trees because no new trees were growing. Can you imagine what it was like when the last monument cut the last tree and there were never going to be any more trees on Easter Island? The monuments are there today. The people are gone because they could not learn to live within their environment. It's the same thing we're faced with today. We need to understand that the tipping point between everything being fine and total disaster is a very fine line. If we look at St. Matthew's Island, for example, 1943, they put 29 reindeer on the island so they would have a backup food supply for the military detachment that was there. They never needed them. 29 reindeer on a 128 square mile island with no natural predators. 20 years, that 29 island animals went to 6,000 fat, sleek, healthy animals in 20 years. 20 years later, there was not one live animal left on the island because they did not learn to live within the environment that they had. We have the same problem right now. When the boat people came to the United States, a little under 300 years ago, we had the deepest, richest topsoil on the face of the earth. In 300 years, we have lost 75% of all of the topsoil that was here. It takes 500 years to produce an inch of topsoil. We haven't been here long enough to produce an inch of topsoil, and we've lost 3/4 of what was here. 1850 in Iowa, they built a church. From 1850 in Iowa till today, that church has been in continuous use. In 1850, they took a picture of it. All of the land around the church was farmed. All of it was at the same elevation. Over 150 years later, they took another picture of the same church. All of the land around it was still farmed. The only difference is the church sits 10 feet higher today than all of the farm ground around it. If we are going to survive as a Homo sapiens species, we need to understand the fact that 80% of all of the grain that is produced in the United States of America today is stuffed down the throat of an animal. It takes 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of meat. 16 pounds of grain, you can feed 32 hungry people. Which is the best use of our resources? We need to understand that the future is to feed healthy people, not animals to kill them. I spent 45 years of my life in animal production. I will tell you that what we're doing today is absolutely, totally non-sustainable. I changed from a meat-eating animal production person to a person today that is a vegan, eating nothing with a face, liver, or a mother. I changed my diet for my health. I do what I do today as a hardcore vegan for the love of the animals. I know that no animal has to die for me to live. If we are going to survive as a species, we have to understand that our job is not to do everything. Our job is to do everything that we can do. And I charge you today with a very simple, straightforward charge. All you have to do is what you can do. Go veg, go green, save the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Howard, for your insight, for this remarkable story. It's certainly been most informative and educational, and as you can imagine, some of the members in our audience right now have a few questions.
Mr. Lyman, you have taken my breath away. Thank you for your love, for coming here today to be with us. My name is Betska K. Burr. I am co-president of Coaching and Leadership International. We are the global leaders in mind, body, spirit, coach training, and I'm also the president of ecofootprint.com. I have a very important question for you, and that is, should we put the carbon tax on meat? Woo! And if yes, how do we do that?
The first question is, should we put a carbon tax on meat? The answer to that is yes. How do we do that? Remember, I spent 5 years working on Capitol Hill. I learned a thing that was called the golden rule. Them that got the gold are making the rules. The question is, how are we going to do it? It's simple. If you can take a fourth-generation farmer, rancher, feedlot operator, and I can change and become a hardcore vegan, does that mean that the people that care about the environment can't? 79% of Americans claim to be vegetarian. If you're actually going to claim to be a vegetarian, how about walking your talk? If we are going to change this, it is not going to happen in Washington, D.C. It's going to happen right here. Look at what has happened in West Hollywood, what they have been able to do in this community. We need to go in our own communities. We have to organize. We have to look at what's not available. And if it's not available, we need to start it. If there are changes that need to happen, we need to be the people that start the change. Our job is to become the leader so that when we look in the eyes of a child, we can basically say to him, I can't do everything, but I can do everything that I can do. And if we don't, there will not be a future for our children and grandchildren. Can we do it? Absolutely. When should we start? Right now.
My name is Darrell Cumberbatch, and I'm a green accountant from Toronto, Canada. My question to you is, should there be warning labels on meat for the chemicals, drugs, and hormones that cause cancer and other diseases such as diabetes?
If we look at what should be the absolute textbook of answering your question, it's Dr. T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study. It is not only the chemicals we're using in producing meat, but look at the fact that it is animal protein that is the #1 cause of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and obesity. The largest dietary study that has ever been done in the history of the world. Is it worse when they end up with the chemicals in it and the hormones in it and the antibiotics in it? Absolutely. But if you want to live a long, healthy life, realize that our Maker did not build junk. He ended up giving us a phenomenal body. If we would just end up consuming what we were designed for, and it is not hamburger, T-bone steaks, or pork chops. I never saw in 45 years of my life an animal going to the slaughterhouse, clicking their heels and saying, "Oh, yippee skippy, I'm going to be a burger tomorrow." They do not want to die. Our job is to make sure that they are able to live the life they were intended to live so that we can live the life we were intended to live.
It's an honor to experience your energy. And our American Indian people are our nation's first environmentalists. My question to you is, meat wouldn't be such an industry without a fast food retail channel. What can be done about it?
When we stop and look at fast food restaurants today, how many of you ever realize how many of your dollars are going out there subsidizing the price of that hamburger being as cheap as possible? If it was not for the subsidy from the American taxpayers, we would be looking at a burger, a 4-ounce burger, costing about $12. Do you believe that the people going to fast food restaurants would be lining up at $12 for a burger without the subsidy? How many of them realize that when we talk about a thing like a mad cow disease, that it takes the amount of material that'll cover the sharp end of a pin to cause a disease that is 100% fatal? If we took one of those 4-ounce burgers and we took it to a DNA lab, we would find there are between 500 and 1,000 different animals in one burger. Do you feel comfortable that one of those was not infected? Do you think that we could not use the subsidy from the American taxpayers for education, Social Security, senior citizens, to rebuild our roads and bridges? Do you realize today that the United States of America is spending between $30 and $60 billion to import $20 billion worth of oil from the Middle East? Could we not do better? Should we not be doing what Al Gore is talking about, taking 10 years and making us self-sufficient in electricity? Could we do this? Absolutely, we could do it. We can actually end up with safe, healthy food that costs what it should cost and not subsidized by the American people, and taking our tax dollars and doing the things we really want to see more of.